Following on from my review of Amy Jump and Ben Wheatley's film Kill List, I'd like to use this video to explore the hidden depths of the movie. Listening to the writer's commentary track on the Blu-ray, I was surprised by how much they appeared to downplay their own movie. In the commentary track, at best, they acknowledge and sometimes point out the foreshadowing included in the movie, and talk about the characters, specifically Neil Maskell's character Jay and Michael Smiley's character Gal, and some of the motivations behind the way they were written and the way the actors portrayed them. While I will be talking about foreshadowing and characters in this video, I'll also be talking about an aspect of the movie they refrained from discussing in their commentary. The essence of what I'm talking about has been discussed by director Ben Wheatley in interviews around the time the movie was released, so I feel confident in saying that these elements were somewhat intentional, and perhaps Wheatley felt more comfortable discussing them in interviews than in the commentary track for the home release. I'll be addressing the specifics in section 3 of this video. I'll probably miss a lot out in this video, but that's fine. I'm focusing on what I've chosen to focus on for the sake of having some brevity. My analysis will contain full spoilers for the movie, so unless you're happy to have the movie spoiled, I'd only recommend watching if you've already seen it. So let's begin. This section on foreshadowing will be fairly short. I'd just like to point out a few of the major setups the film makes for payoffs later on. One that even Jump and Wheatley point out in their commentary track comes very early on, when Jay, his wife Shell, and their son Sam are in the garden play fighting. Sam is on Shell's back sword fighting with Jay, a scene that's horrifically recreated at the end of the movie when the cult forces Jay to fight the Hunchback, revealed after he's killed it to be Shell with Sam on her back. Next, at the dinner party, Gal's new girlfriend Fiona talks about her job in human resources, in which she must lay people off from their jobs. Gal jokes that she's a hatchet man, to which she responds that there's nothing personal about her work. Jay muses that the people she lays off probably take it personally. In the end, when Jay kills Shell and Sam, Fiona is revealed to be among the cultists, and it's thus implied that she accompanied Gal to Jay's house on her cult's behalf to scout for sacrificial lambs. This is supported by the scene in which Fiona carves the cult's symbol in Jay and Shell's bathroom and pockets some tissues with Jay's blood on them. Next, the gutted rabbit left in Jay and Shell's garden by their cat foreshadows the fate of Gal near the end of the movie, who's left with his torso slashed open after a cultist attacks him. Earlier, Jay took the rabbit in the garden as an offering from the cat. Could Gal's fate have been an offering, which Jay himself unwittingly makes by putting Gal out of his misery? Speaking of which, notice that Gal, Shell and Sam are technically all killed by Jay's hand, not by cultists. This is foreshadowed by the infection that develops in his hand throughout the movie, thanks to a cut that was made by the leader of the cult as part of a blood contract. In this sense, the cult's influence has invaded Jay's body through his hand and wrestled control from him, turning his hands into weapons to be used against the people he loves. I'd like to briefly discuss the characters of Jay and Gal, soldiers who returned home from Iraq and have since become hitmen. Their last mission 8 months ago in Ukraine went disastrously wrong when Jay flew off the handle in some way, and Jay has been scared to go back to work since then. I noticed when I rewatched the movie that Jay and Gal don't simply turn off their emotions while they're at work. They must warm themselves up before they make a kill and are emotionally affected after the kill. Before they kill the priest, Jay must reassure Gal that the priest is probably hiding a terrible evil secret and deserves to be killed. Gal is religious, and even he, a hitman, can't reconcile assassinating a priest with his personal faith. The night before the kill, Jay confronts an annoying group of hippie-like Christians in a hotel restaurant when they begin to sing at their table. I took this as Jay's own way of psyching up to kill a religious person, allowing himself to become so aggravated with these innocent people's religious singing that he can actually confront and threaten them, even imagining out loud how he would kill them. However, when Jay and Gal are investigating the librarian, they discover an archive of what I can only assume are snuff films in his possession. In particular, this enrages Jay to the point that he tortures the librarian before killing him, extracting information on a circle of people he's involved with. Jay tracks these people down and tortures, then murders them too. This is the trick Jay had played on himself to prepare for killing the priest, but taken to the extreme, and thus he once again flies off the handle and goes on a murder spree. No longer is he thinking out loud about killing, he's just doing it. This raises some questions about Jay, obviously. The family cat is the key to understanding this. I mentioned earlier that Jay took the rabbit as an offering from the cat, which he believes is trying to keep the family well fed, but Shell tells Sam that she thinks the cat simply enjoys killing. Ask yourself this: when Jay returns to work, is he trying to keep his family well fed, or does he simply enjoy killing? The cat is a reflection of Jay himself. Jay sees his ideal self in the cat, the backbone of his family, but when Shell looks at the cat, she sees nothing more than an animal, a killer. Kill List is the story of an embittered and violent man being initiated into a cult that thrives on violence. But the violence of Jay and the cult isn't only physical. The layers of violence on display in Kill List are verbal, physical, economic, and psychological. Those final two seem to cross over in the movie, and are so fleeting that I'd personally consider them one thing. I'll come back to all this, but first I'd like to address Damon Wise's article for The Guardian, in which he interviews Ben Wheatley. In the article, Wise describes Kill List as a post-Iraq gangster movie, and Wheatley elaborates. He says, "We've just had two major wars going on that nobody seemed to be that bothered about, so we're in the middle of this Vietnam experience and no one's really saying anything." Jay and Gal fought in Iraq, for a cause they neither believed in nor fully understood, and Jay even says in the movie that he wishes he'd fought in World War II, where the Nazis were a clear enemy against whom war was fully justified. In another interview with Faria Zaman for the Huffington Post, Wheatley described how Kill List is a horror movie all the way through, because every aspect of the movie is a living nightmare for someone. Watching Jay and Shell in the first part of the movie argue in front of their son Sam is scary because it reminds people, including Wheatley himself, of their own childhoods and seeing their own parents argue. In my own head, I've always considered this a genre-bending movie divided into 3 acts. Act 1 is the first 25 minutes, presented as a kitchen sink drama. Act 2 is the middle 45 minutes, presented as a violent crime thriller. And Act 3 is the final 25 minutes, a modern-day folk horror. This 3-genre approach, coupled with the 3 targets in Jay and Gal's contract, is the structure by which I view this movie's 3 acts of violence. Act 1. Verbal violence. The first act of the movie is a drama in which Jay and Shell seem to be constantly yelling at each other, committing acts of violence through words. The first target on the list is a priest, and one could argue that the weapon of religion is words. Notice that the night before killing the priest, Jay commits verbal violence against the singing Christians by threatening them. Notice also that what the priest represents, religion, is a form of control imposed on Gal's life. Act 2. Physical violence. The second act of the movie is a crime thriller about hitmen, in which Jay commits physical violence, torturing and murdering several people. The second target is a librarian who archives snuff films, in which physical violence is inflicted on others. Watching these snuff films, ironically, is what motivates Jay to commit more physical violence. The librarian represents violence, which has controlled Gal's and especially Jay's lives during their military service and their subsequent careers as hitmen. Act 3. Economic and psychological violence. By the final act of the movie, Jay has undergone psychological trauma from his murder spree, and his family have been threatened by their client. The final act is a horror story in which Jay must kill his best friend, his wife, and his child, leaving him a broken man as the movie finishes. His target before all of this happened was a politician, and I'd argue that a politician's main weapons are money and psychology. Like Gal with his religion, Jay's actions throughout the movie have been controlled by what politicians have grown to represent in his life, namely unemployment and war. Let's bring all of this together. The genre of each of the movie's acts reflects a different type of violence. Each of these types of violence is reflected in each of Jay and Gal's targets. Each of these targets represents an aspect of control that has been placed, voluntarily or not, over Jay and Gal's lives. The priest represents Gal's religion, the librarian represents both men's violence, and the MP represents Jay's economic struggles and his psychological war wounds. By proxy, a cult of which Jay and Gal have no knowledge has invaded both their lives and taken control of them, and by Jay's infected hand, everyone he loves will suffer for the benefit of the cult. The recession that began in 2007 and was still affecting the world when this movie was released in 2011 hangs over the characters in Kill List, and if there's a horror movie monster to be found in this movie, it's the intricate machine the cult represents, marrying the most intrinsic aspects of the modern westernized lifestyle: money, employment, politics, religion, and war. Kill List is about the violence, physical, verbal, and psychological, of living in the Western world in the 21st century. If you've actually sat through this video, I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope you've enjoyed my content so far and would consider subscribing.